You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 78, Hollywood Stunts and Beating Cancer, with Mark Chavarria.
Writing a book. It can be the best way to build or grow your business, or to simply tell the story that you wish to tell. Learn how to write your book in 30 days or less. Pick up 30-day Author today from Amazon, Apple iBooks, or other online retailers.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. Thanks for tuning in. You know, if you listen really closely, you may actually hear someone running, I think it's a water pump. Like one of those that you use to power a spray washer or something. Some guy, I mean literally as I started recording today, some guy pulled a van in and pulled out a giant hose and started a big generator-like device. So if you hear a lot of noise, that's what it is. I apologize. You know, this week, I'm actually talking to somebody. So I don't know how much you know about me, but let me give you just a brief history here. This is not my first career. Being an author is not my first career, obviously, but I spent, I've had quite a few, actually. If you look at my resume, it reads like an Indeed listing or something, but I actually spent some time at one point in my career working in video, film, and television production. And in that, I met several people who are still good friends to this day. One of those is today's guest, Mark Chavarria, and he is, well, he's a stuntman. I mean, honestly, that's what he does. Now, when I met him, he was doing some other side work, but this was his primary career. It was his dream, and I'm kind of impressed by it, because how many times in your life do you actually get to know an actual Hollywood stuntman? And he's been in some big titles. I mean, some big name films. He's going to drop a few of those during the interview, but you can actually find him, I think, on IMDb. So if you look him up, I'll try to put a note about that. I'll try to put a link in the show notes if he's on IMDb. But he's a great guy. He was always a very kind guy, but he went through something very tragic. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he talks about that and the impact it had on his life in this interview. And he also talks about how he beat it. So I think you're going to enjoy this. Now, I want to preface all this. I'm just going to put it right out there, right from the front. I'm not a doctor. Mark is not a doctor. You cannot take what we tell you here, what you hear in this interview, as sort of biblical truth for medicine. Don't go off and do something against your doctor's wishes based on this interview. I take no responsibility for that. I'm just here to report what happened. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I'm pretty impressed, and I'm pretty impressed by what I saw. I watched him go through this over the course of like a year or so. You know, it was horrifying to think about what was happening to him, and he still deals with some of the fallout from this, as far as the radiation and everything he had to endure. That's got some of this has some long-term effects. So I think you'll enjoy this interview. It's inspirational to me. I think it'll be so to you as well. Before we jump into that, just real quick housekeeping stuff. If you are a supporter of this show on Patreon, I really thank you for that. We've had some growth in that, so I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And if you would like to help continue to support this show, you can check out Patreon, my Patreon account, or my Patreon page. If you go to wordslingerpodcast.com and click on the Patreon link, you can go and you can actually commit to as little as $1 a month. That's like $1 per episode. And it would help me out tremendously. I do have this big lofty goal of raising $5,000 a month to support the show. That would mean hiring people to do some of the behind the scenes tasks. You know, some of you who listen, you're actually podcasters yourselves. You know how much work this can take. And I'm an author, man. I got into this for, several reasons. Never intended to make it like a full-time career, but I get so much out of it. And the people who listen seem to get so much out of it. I get, listener feedback all the time from people who just truly enjoy the show and are truly entertained by it. So entertained by it, but also informed by it. So that's been perfect. So, speaking of that, I actually have, and I'm really grateful for when this happens, but I actually have a new review on iTunes, thanks to my new good friend, Buddy Gott. And if you are not listening to his podcast, the Buddy Gott Show on iTunes, man, you're missing out, because he's freaking hilarious and kind of off the wall, and I like that about him. But Buddy actually wrote a review, and I'm going to read this off to you now. Very entertaining show. What I enjoy most about this show is the enthusiasm of the host, Kevin Tomlinson. That would be me. It's obvious that he's having a lot of fun doing his interviews, and that makes it extra fun for me as a listener. A fun and entertaining show indeed. Now, the stuttering and stumbling there, that was mine, not Buddy's, but you can but I appreciate that, Buddy. Thanks a lot, man. And I reciprocated, dude. I feel bad that I didn't do this earlier, but I paused the whole recording and everything, and went and found your show on iTunes and rated you and gave you a review. So quid pro quo, man. So thanks a lot for that. If you would review the show, I would read your review on air, and I would love to have that. That definitely helps me out. So go and find the show on iTunes. You can just search for Word Slinger on iTunes. That's probably going to be the fastest, easiest way. You can also search for Kevin Tomlinson, and that'll put you there. We can do that on Stitcher, Google Play, all the places where you can find this podcast. I would appreciate that. It would be very helpful. That's one more way to support the show. And, of course, there's the Patreon, and you can buy a copy of 30 Day Author, which I think you'd enjoy. I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback on that lately, and I really appreciate you guys taking a look at that and letting me know about that. That was one of the labor of love books that I wrote. It was never meant to be much of a profit center. It was mostly written, I'll be completely honest, so that I had something to take to events and trade shows where my fiction wouldn't really play well. So there you go. I mean, but there's so much about the process in there. The whole idea is to, develop that daily writing habit. And I think that's very important for people. So I'm happy that it's actually making a difference in the world. So if I can't ask anything else of my life, at least I can say that I helped some people develop a daily writing habit, and that's good enough for me. So all that said, let's get on to somebody who's got a really remarkable life. It's amazing. I've known this guy for years. I like him a lot. I mean, he's always been. He's a very special kind of guy, very positive and upbeat. You're going to hear that in the interview. But his battle with cancer is something, it's just short of being amazing. I mean, it actually is amazing. Don't let me short sell it here. So let's get into that interview with Mark Chavarria. I hope you'll enjoy it. Stick around after. You can hear some notes from me to close the show. So see you soon. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. And today I'm talking to someone who is basically he's an old friend of mine. We've known each other for years now, back when I was in my television and film days. And that is Mark Chavarria. He is a stuntman. He's also a cancer survivor. We're going to talk about that. Mark, man, it is great having you on the show. How you doing?
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for the invite.
We've known each other, I don't know, since about early 2000s at least, right? So it's been a good 10 years.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when we were over there at the old office over there off of 290.
Right, yeah. In my old closet-sized office space.
Exactly, mine too.
I kind of miss it, to be honest with you. Right now I'd give anything to be able to close the door on everything. So you are, now, I haven't read like your official bio to anyone yet, so but it's kind of cool because I love how you start by saying you've been beat up by on the big and little screen by Chuck Norris, Dolph Lundgren, Steven Seagal, Robert De Niro, Billy Bob Thornton, and many more. And that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's what 25 years in a Hollywood stuntman career will do for you, folks. So
and then some. Yes, exactly. The stories I could tell you.
Well, I want to hear some of those stories. We can talk about a little bit of your career here.
Okay.
I know we've got bigger and more important topics to cover, but I would like to kind of give my listeners a background into what you do and how you got into it.
Okay. Basically, I've been a stuntman and stunt coordinator in Hollywood for over 25 years now. I started when I was a sophomore in high school. I did my first feature. I was bit by the bug right then and there. I did a little show called They Still Call Me Bruce.
Yeah.
And I was the only white belt that beat out black belts, brown belts, purple belts, and everything. The stunt coordinator was really impressed with my martial arts abilities at the time. And I was going through a lot of tournaments and just proving my worth out there on the tournament scene. Before UFC was really coming around, we would do these tournaments where it was all out, kind of like the Karate Kid. So
Yeah.
I got noticed there and got hooked up with some stunt guys. It was the Houston Stuntmen's Association in Houston back in the 90s and late 80s. So that's when I got hooked up with those stunt guys. And instead of going to college right away, I decided to set my friends on fire, learn how to jump off buildings, flip cars, do fight scenes. That was my training.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how I got in the business. And 100 shows later, here I am, still alive and well.
Yeah, you've been on some pretty well-known shows too. The most recent that I know about is Sons of Anarchy, right?
Yeah, Sons of Anarchy. I just completed Jack Reacher 2 with Tom Cruise last month in New Orleans. And
That's
before
awesome.
that, I did the new USA TV series called Queen of the South.
Yeah.
I just coordinated a movie for James Franco late last year, called Killing the Czar, Kill the Czar. It's a little short or feature that he directed and co-directed and wrote as well and starred in. So did
Very
that,
cool.
did 11/22/63 for Hulu and J.J. Abrams and Stephen King, starring James Franco. So I did 2 shows back-to-back with James in Dallas last year. And, just here and there getting shows here. The Straight Outta Compton just came out. A DVD did really well, was even nominated for an Academy Award, which is really nice to have a show. That's like the third, fourth show that I've done that has been nominated for an Academy Award. So it's nice to get recognition on some pretty big shows.
Yeah, no kidding. And you guys are kind of the unsung heroes of the action movie and television world. Like no one ever thinks to look you guys up, really.
Exactly, and we're trying to change that, especially with the Academy Awards. There's been a big lobby effort. We're closing in at 100,000 signatures to get it noticed, because the Academy says we're not an art and we're not a science. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We design action all the time. We invent the wheel when it comes to action of fight scenes. I mean, look at Mad Max when they were showing all the clips and trailers on the Academy Awards. Every single one of those clips and trailers was of some kind of wild car doing a stunt, flipping in the air, or a motorcycle, or a guy fighting, doing a fight scene. So it is an art and it is a science, and it's really amazing that the Academy would even think something like that. I mean, if the Emmys could recognize us, then why can't the Academy? And that's what we're trying to change, to get that recognition that we feel we deserve.
Right. Yeah, because it takes a lot of brains to and a lot of time, really, to figure out the logistics of a good stunt.
It does. Nowadays, whenever I get called to do a feature or short film or music video or TV show, is I do what's called previs. I pre-visualize the action. I'll take the script and I'll take, like, if it's a fight scene, and I'll get together with the director and I'm like, okay, what's your favorite type of action movies? Is it Quentin Tarantino? Is it, James McTiernan? All those guys that did the Die Hards. What is your style of action? Do you like J.J. Abrams action? Do you like, So we get along with the director and we ask him what his mode of action is, and I'll go do research. I'll shoot the fight literally with some stunt people, take it to the director, and he's like, wow, what is this? What is this new tool you're working with? Because beforehand, back in the day, back in the 80s, 90s, how it was done way back prior to all this, is you would have to wait till you arrived on set, and then figure it out there on. So you're wasting a lot of time trying to rehearse this fight scene. When you rehearse the fight scene now before and you shoot it, that way if the director has any qualms with it, they're like, no, I want to change this or I want to change that. You have that luxury prior to getting on set, and now you're saving the production company a lot of time. You've now shown the actors what the fight scene looks like. Now you could train with the actors, because we train people like Angelina Jolie, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, all these actors that do all this high-level action. If we could work with them now, like Keanu Reeves on John Wick. Now you're able to work with these actors months in advance. They take it serious. They know that they're the ones that everybody's looking at, and they're like, okay, are they going to see me? Are they going to see my stunt double? And so technology has changed so many things to where now you could put the actor's face on the stunt guy's body, which is amazing. I saw it firsthand on Fast and Furious, the last one that came out, the stunt doubles, it was incredible how technology has changed, even putting it on the late, great Paul Walker's, body as well. It's really, really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and interesting. I mean, because of that now, I mean, you guys you're performing now. I mean, you always were, but I mean, now it's a whole new level. Like because actors they do more than just speak lines. I mean, they emote through body language and facial expression and that sort of thing. I mean, if you guys are the ones standing in for them on the the body language front, you guys should get Academy Awards.
Yeah, so that's what the good fight is. So you should look it up. It's on my website. I've even posted up on Facebook to try to get signatures so the Academy could recognize this. They're saying, oh well, the show's too long already, but yet they kept adding other categories. Now they added animation shorts, animated features. So how can you tell me? I mean, stunt guys way before me have been lobbying the Academy for over 20 years now.
Right.
They've even had people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Leonardo DiCaprio, a lot of big names, Spielberg, even lobby and write the Academy going, hey, these guys should be recognized for an Oscar, because it's about time. It's just one of those, another fight for us to fight. That's all.
Yeah, well, there's always one. There's always one more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, now you've been doing this 25 years. You started in the Houston area, right?
Yes, I did.
And you were working on Hollywood productions then, or is that just?
Yeah, it was really funny because when I got into the business in the late '80s, doing shows, Houston was kind of like known as the third market, third coast. There was Hollywood, there was New York, and then there was Houston. They were starting to shoot a lot of shows like Dark Angel, Black Snow, RoboCop 2, The Chase, and a lot of shows, Powder. And so I started to get my break. I'm like, wow, I'm in the perfect spot. I was the only martial artist in the group at the time. So I was doing, a lot of the martial arts back then, when martial arts really wasn't that popular like it is now. Now you see it in every show. Everybody wants to know how to do the fight scenes, like, oh, I love that movie Taken with Liam Neeson. I want to do that. Or I want to fight like Angelina and Brad and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So now what I was doing 20 years ago, now they're starting to do now. It's really picked up. And luckily I've stayed with the martial arts. It's still, whenever there's a fight, with somebody, like when I did Walking Tall Part 2 and 3, they're like, throw Mark in there. He knows martial arts. So I would do a fight scene with Kevin Sorbo. Because of the flexibility, because of my agility and spatial awareness, it's really nice to know that you could do those things. Same thing when I fought Steven Seagal, same thing when I fought Chuck Norris. They want to put you in with these actors knowing that you have really good self-control. That way, if they miss their mark, they know I'm not going to kick them upside the head or punch them or anything like that.
Right.
So that's why they put a lot of us guys in that situation, because they know that you're not going to get yelled at or you're not going to hit, Robert De Niro. Or do anything to cause him, because these guys they want to work for professionals, and they are professionals, and they deserve that.
Yeah, you're not going to hit them on accident anyway.
Exactly, and that's what they don't want. And I've seen it happen. I've seen them. I've been hit by actors hit stunt guys, and it's the nature of the beast sometimes. Right.
So, all right. Aside from the martial arts, I mean, what was it? Was this something you were always looking to do, like getting to being a stuntman?
Yeah.
Really? What inspired that?
People, I grew up and I just was, my dad, when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to these, they would call them Houston Cons, way before there was Comic Con and Comic Palooza and all these different big comic, conventions. Right. They were having these things back in the 70s and 80s. So my dad used to take me to them, like at the Shamrock Hotel, which is no longer around, the Rice Hotel. We would go to these comic conventions, and I would meet people like Spanky from our gang, the original Spanky.
Right.
I would meet Mr. Sulu from Star Trek. I would meet Roy Rogers, the original Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller. And so they would show all these films, and they would have all these actors there, Roy Rogers. And so I would meet these people, and I was so enamored with these people. I was like, wow, why do people love these people? This is so cool. I want to be recognized one day and such. And I used to watch, they used to show all these old horror movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Tarzan. So I would love these shows. I was just fascinated. As a kid growing up, television was a big deal. And so I could recall my father taking me to the movies like E.T., Superman, and just seeing the emotion that people had while watching these films. You were literally changing people's lives, because even if you don't watch TV or movies every day, there's that one film that you love. People love Gone with the Wind. It changed their life. To Kill a Mockingbird. There's always a story to tell, and people are always moved by these stories. So I guess that's why I was really, I remember literally what changed it all was watching Superman, the first one with Christopher Reeve.
Right.
And the special effects at the time were like top of the, state of the art special effects. I remember the tagline, "You will believe a man could fly."
Yeah.
And it was so awesome because you were like, "Holy schmoly, this guy's flying! He's doing." I mean, at the time, and I remember when the credits rolled and the lights came on, the audience stood up and were clapping and cheering for this guy. And I'm like, "Holy schmoly, this is so cool! I want to be a part of that." And flash forward, 20 years later, I'm working on Iron Man. I'm going to watch it with my dad and my brother, on the big screen. And Marvel, that movie changed the face of the movies that you see now, because they're all superhero movies. And with the success of the first Iron Man, which I was so glad to be a part of, I remember watching the movie, and at the end, everybody stood up and clapped and cheered. I'm like, "Holy schmoly, there's my name on the big screen. How freaking cool is this?"
Yeah.
So it was something that, it was a childhood, dream that I always had. And it's funny when people know me. Somebody chimed in yesterday on Facebook on one of my posts, and they're like, "Yeah, I remember, because it was my neighbor that literally lived across the street from me." And she goes, "I remember you kicking trees out in your front yard." And my wife was like, what is she talking about? I was like, "Oh, when I was growing up, to train for all these movies, I would eat, sleep, and poop the martial arts like 10 hours a day. I would practice my kicks, my punches, and everything, and all that prepared me for later on success in life." Because people are like, "Oh, you're so lucky, you get to work in film." And I'm like, no, really, luck had nothing to do with it. It was discipline and training that, nobody saw the hours of sweat I put into all this training that would prepare me for all this later on in life. So luck had nothing to do with it. It was just determination and will. When you close the door, I would knock on it. When you wouldn't let me in, I'd kick it down. And so that was just my determination all the whole time. And if it worked for Chuck Norris and for Bruce Lee, why couldn't it work for me, too, my big heroes,
Right, yeah. It's interesting to me that the route you took was getting into the stunt work and not like, I know lots of people who look at the movies and look at TV and they want to be actors, right? And
yes, exactly.
That's its own tough road to run, but
yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because I did want to be an actor, but I was really, really shy. I never did any high school plays.
Yeah.
And so when I saw Christopher Reeve on the big screen, I wanted to be an actor because I wanted to change people. I wanted to make them happy. I wanted to make them sad. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them cry, because I saw the power that it had on people. And I was like, wow, this is so awesome that one person, one film could change somebody's life, like The Color Purple or films of that nature, Schindler's List. It's really amazing what film does, even documentaries.
Right.
It really changes the world, and it's universal. Our films are big in Thailand. They're big in China. I mean, it's amazing what, Chuck Norris, I was watching a documentary the other day on how Chuck Norris fought communism in Russia. They would sneak these VHS tapes over there where you were told what you could watch and what you could listen to. But people would smuggle these tapes in there, and Chuck Norris was like one of the biggest. Anytime you had a Chuck Norris, film, people would flock to your house to watch it on this little small TV on a VHS. You'd have like 20, 30 people. It was just amazing. I'm like, holy schmoly, this is crazy. How can film have such an impact on the world,
Right, yeah. I remember hearing, and I don't remember which region of the world it was, but I remember there was this big news story about how Sylvester Stallone movies were banned in this one country or this one region because it was giving everyone ideas and they were all rebelling.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. That's why communist places like Cuba and China and Russia, they outlawed a lot of those movies. You could only watch their movies or what they told you to watch.
Right.
So there were, once one person got a hold of this, they were like, it spread like wildfire. Like, what? You got to check out this Rambo movie, this Chuck Norris movie. I mean, they were really, really, really big, and now they're even bigger in foreign sales. That's why a lot of these movies that Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme do, they're straight to video, movies. But the impact in Dolph Lundgren, I mean, their appeal is universal, and I think that had a lot to do with it back in the day when you were trying to get these movies that were once banned. Now you could get them with easy access, because the internet has changed everything with technology, and we've come a long way since the 80s. So it's really amazing that these people are now, I saw this documentary online the other night on Netflix. Trying to think of the name of it. Basically, where this father had kept like 4 or 5 of the kids locked up. They were like a wolf pack.
Right.
And they would watch and reenact all these movies. They would write them out. They would film them. And it was amazing because these kids were never allowed outside their apartment for like the first 18 years of their life. So they were sheltered. They only grew up on movies. It was an incredible story on how all they did was watch movies, and they could recite any movie that they were big fans of Quentin Tarantino and Kill Bill and Reservoir Dogs, and they would shoot these movies on VHS. They would act them out. They would dress up. They would make the most incredible props that you'd ever seen, guns, costumes. I mean, it was amazing how the movies had changed these kids' lives. So it's a really cool documentary.
What, do you know the name of that? I'd love to see that, actually.
I'm trying to think. I want to say it's The Wolf Pack.
The Wolf Pack.
But I'm not sure. I'll look it up on Netflix.
Okay.
But It was really, I remember somebody telling me, I'm like, holy schmoly, that was an awesome documentary. I got to check it out. And I saw it on Netflix.
Yeah, okay. I'll check that out because that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
I mean,
hold on. I think it is. Yeah, it's a documentary. It's called The Wolf Pack. It came out in 2015. It was about 6 Angelou brothers represent their favorite movies with costumes and makeup that most closely matches the film version.
Wow.
It's set in an apartment on the 16th floor of an urban project in New York that they have not they hadn't left in like, I forget how many years it was. It was a really, really cool story called The Wolf Pack. Wow.
I'll check that out. Thanks a lot for that.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, I'll put it in the show notes where you can click through and check it out for yourself. Okay. You've worked on a lot of stuff, man, and it surprises me. And every time you mention something on Facebook, I'm like, "Oh, I had no idea you were in that," And so now I kind of scan, like, I'm gonna catch Mark. If I look close enough, I'll find him somewhere.
Exactly.
So, what's what's been like your favorite role? Like, what's the one you think has had the biggest impact on your career?
I would definitely say Inception. That was probably one of my favorite movies to work on of all time, only because it was just working with Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
And seeing this, it's like working with Spielberg, so to speak. You're watching the cinematic genius that has made and created these awesome films that people love. And so anytime you're thrown into a position like that, you're kind of like, wow, I made it. I made it from, working on like no budget freebie shows to now here I am about to do a scene with Leonardo DiCaprio or about to do a scene with, another actor. It's really humbling, and it's like, wow, the hard work paid off. Dreams do come true. Never give up on your dreams, and I think that one really, really did a lot for me, especially for my career, because when it came out, it was a big feature.
Right.
And because of that, I was able to get a lot of other big features, also able to get, coordinating credits, and coordinating jobs as a result of that. Because once you play with the A-Team on big shows like Inception, Terminator Salvation, Straight Outta Compton, Olympus Has Fallen, I think that kind of puts you in a different light in people's eyes, like, okay, you didn't do this movie that I've never heard of. Because you look at some people that call themselves stunt guys or stunt coordinators, but you've never heard of one movie they've ever done.
Right,
and you look at their credits on IMDb, they coordinated their brother's sister's quinceanera or their wedding, and they're a DP and they're a producer. So, it's that life that I'm like, really, guys, it takes years and years of experience and being around on all these shows to where you're able to call yourself, a stuntman or a stunt coordinator. So.
Right. I have my own, very light connection to Inception, actually, because my wife Kara and I were actually in Paris, the week before they shot the scene under the bridge.
Oh, no way!
Yeah, and
really?
we were in that exact spot. We have photos in that spot. So when the film came out, we're like, holy crap, we were standing right there.
That's funny.
So not quite as cool as your connection to it, but hey, I'll take anything I can get. So
exactly.
This is fascinating, man. I don't think I've had a huge variety of people on the show, and from all levels. I don't think I've ever had anyone with the kind of stories that you have about Hollywood in particular. So it's kind of interesting because it's like an inside look at the Hollywood that we know, but you're getting you see a different part of it than anyone else.
Yes.
That's
Uh-huh.
interesting. Have you seen anything that was kind of eye
The bad and
opening?
the ugly.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah, I
bet.
mean, I've seen actors. Yeah, I've seen actors lose it. Like you hear, like I remember a few years ago when Christian Bale went off on the DP,
Right.
and it made the audio from that came out like it was everywhere. He was just
Right.
berating this DP. He was yelling at. Well, I was there. I was working on Terminator Salvation at the time, so it's really amazing what you see that side. Now, I wasn't recording it. I didn't release the audio. I forgot who did it. But
Yeah.
it's just like nobody would ever believe me in a million years if I told them what happened today.
Right.
It's just one of those things. But with technology, all somebody's got to do is whip out their phone and catch a celebrity doing something they're not supposed to do, and now they're on TMZ.
Right.
And you got to remember these people. They're just human like you and I.
Right.
And I don't treat them any differently or anything like that. But it's just really disappointing when I work with certain people. And I'll give you an example. I don't care if she's listening. But I worked with Beyonce one time, and I just thought she was the rudest, most condescending person I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I never, ever cared to work with her again.
Wow.
She was
Yeah.
it was just really disappointing because I was like, holy schmoly, I'm working with one of the biggest celebrities in the world, and what I was doing is a very dangerous stunt. I could have killed her and the entire crew if I screwed up. But I didn't. I did a good job. She never once said thank you. She never once introduced herself. She never once, And I usually get to talk to some of these guys for a minute, whether it's shaking a hand, taking a quick picture, or whatever. And a lot, I've worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, a lot of big A-list stars. And I was thinking she was going to be cool, but she was the rudest person I'd ever worked with, and I never want to work with her again. And it took an arm and a leg to chase down to get paid. On that job, you would think Beyonce, they would have money, they'd pay you.
Right.
I had to fight the label. I had to fight her production company. It was a joke, and I'm like, wow, and she screwed a lot of people that work locally on it, that were production crew,
Yeah.
that didn't get paid, that took forever to get paid. It's one of those like, wow, can you believe this? This person that's got hundreds of millions, probably a billionaire, and she can't even pay the crew for this music video. It was pretty sad.
Yeah,
Pretty sad.
that's so disappointing to hear at times, because
Very.
you see the
Yeah.
public persona of these people, and you start kind of thinking you know them, and
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
trust, and then that gets just shattered. So out of everyone you've worked with from that sort of A list, I mean, who stands out as being just sort of the most genuine person that you've worked with?
I think, anybody that has ever worked with Chuck Norris will tell you Chuck's probably one of the coolest guys you'll ever work with. He's the real deal. I mean, I remember as a kid watching this guy in all his movies. I studied his career. I mean, I watched him as a professional fighter, growing up, and he's definitely genuine. I mean, I remember, as a kid watching this guy going to high school and watching all the Missing in Actions, the Delta Forces, all these different action movies. And here I am about to fight him on Walker, Texas Ranger.
Right.
It just doesn't get any cooler than that when you're working with a hero that you grew up watching. And I just remember watching people like Robert Downey Jr., Sean Penn growing up, and here I am now actually working with these people, partying with these people, going out with these guys. It's kind of surreal. Like I said, it's very humbling. Like, holy schmoly, I'm hanging out with Sean Penn. He wanted me to take him out in Houston, and we're going out to clubs. We're having a blast. I'm on top of the world. I think I'm just the coolest kid in the world. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I
It's
bet.
a lot of fun. I was just in Canada working with Jason Momoa, who's going to be the new Aquaman.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
He was in Conan the Barbarian. So it was just really nice working with this guy, and having him invite you over to his house on the last night before you leave, having a dinner with like the cast and the crew. And he's really, he's been really just a really cool guy.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know that there's really cool people like that out there that aren't about their ego and they're a little bit. I mean, it's nice.
Yeah. That guy, I now he used to be on a soap opera years ago, but I knew him from Stargate Atlantis.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he was on
Yeah,
Game of
exactly.
Thrones, and he's
Yeah.
So I'd love to
Cool
meet
guy.
that guy sometime. I think he'd be interesting to meet.
Yes.
So okay, that's your career, and part of that, your career kind of, I think, leads into this as well. But I want to talk to you about the cancer, because I remember when you first announced this, and I and thousands of other people apparently continuously praying for you, making, hoping that you were going to
Yes.
pull through and recover. But you had quite a battle there for a while. So why don't you tell us a little about how that turned out and what started?
Yeah, I mean, life was going great. I just finished Olympus Has Fallen with Gerard Butler,
Yeah.
and I'd been noticing all these problems that I was having. I was having blood in my stool. I was fatigued and tired all the time. I just had barely any, strength to work. I mean, whatever energy I had to work out, it took a lot. So I was wondering why I was having all these problems, and my wife was like, you need to go to the doctors. Went to the doctor. October 17th of 2013 is a day I will never, ever forget, when the doctor tells you, or your wife actually comes in after you wake up from, the colonoscopy telling you that you have stage 4 colorectal cancer. And I'm like, no, I don't. And she's like in tears going, yeah, you've got cancer. And I'm like, no, I don't. Because that was my mindset early on. I'd been a martial artist and a fighter all my life, and I'd refused to let anything or anyone ever beat me. Yeah. I was always told I could never make it in the film business, and here I was proving everybody, wrong years later. So I had the same mindset when I was diagnosed with cancer. So once I was diagnosed with cancer, we moved forward to the next thing I know you're going to ask me is, what about this cannabis oil that you're bragging about all the time?
Right.
And so we'll segue into that. Basically, when you're diagnosed with cancer right away, it's like, you think it's a death sentence. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. People die of cancer. Patrick Swayze, Farrah Fawcett, Marvin Zindler, all these famous people that had millions of dollars all died of the same cancer that I have. It's the second deadliest cancer out there. So I started to do a lot of research on it, and I was, I listened to the doctors because, we're all taught doctors know best. Listen to the doctors. I was on hydrocodone, Oxycontin, just to use the restroom. That's how painful it was. And when I say painful, we're talking blood coming out both ends. It was really, really bad. So I knew there was something out there that had to be better than what they were giving me. So an old friend from high school contacted my wife and said, hey, have you guys ever looked into smoking medicinal marijuana and cannabis oil? I heard it works wonders. So my wife did a lot of research, and there wasn't as much as there is now on the cannabis research with cancer. So she's like, would you be opposed to doing cannabis oil and smoking marijuana? And I'm like, heck no, I'll do anything at this stage in the game. It was bad. I mean, Kevin, it was to the point where I had a gun to my head and I wanted to kill myself because the drugs and the pain were just so incredibly bad.
Yeah.
So once I got on this oil, it was like a saving grace. I could not believe what this stuff had done to me. I was now able to get off the Oxycontin, the hydrocodone, the nausea medicine, and everything. And I started to recover a lot better from the chemo, from the radiation. Mm-hmm. And the doctors were like, dumbfounded, like, wow, man, you're doing pretty good. But it's because you're young and you're strong. And I'm like, no, I'm 45 years old. I'm not in my 20s and my 30s anymore. So because of this, and I started to do tons of research on what, the cannabis does to you. And it was just amazing what this oil does and how it, touches the, cannabinoid system. We all have cannabinoid receptors in our bodies, and a lot of people didn't know that. So whenever you take this oil and you smoke, it activates and regenerates all these dead cells because the chemo kills everything good and bad in you.
Right.
I mean, it was so bad that, I had to wear gloves just to pick up a glass of water because it was so cold and my hands would tingle. I would drop the glass if I didn't have my gloves. I wore gloves 24/7 because the neuropathy that it caused in my hands and my feet was just insane, to where I would literally put lotion on my hands, and within an hour they were cracking and bleeding because the chemo was so strong.
Yeah.
So the doctors, unbeknownst to me, told my wife, your husband has less than a 16% chance of making it. And once, they told her that, her parents had both died. Her mom had died of the same cancer that I had and was diagnosed roughly at the same age. So she lost her mom within 6 months. So, of course, she was scared, like, oh, my gosh, my husband's going to die. Right. So once I got on this oil, man, Kevin, I'm telling you, I never felt better. I was able to work out. I woke up with the munchies. I was able to sleep very well. I mean, it was just incredible, to what was going on with my body, doing experiments with this. I'd heard stories, but I'd never met anybody that had taken this oil before and it, had great success like I had with it. As you know, I'm still here 2.5 years later, still fighting it. It's come back, a couple times since then. The second time I beat it again. It was in the lymph nodes, and it's still stage 4, and it came back again last October, and it was spreading in the colon and the liver big time. And now, 6 months later, it is completely gone in the colon, and it has shrunk from roughly about the size of an inch, maybe a little bit bigger. And as of yesterday, it's down to like the size of a pea, maybe like an O on your phone. That's how much it has worked. So that's where I'm at with that.
That's I've most of my life, I think I've heard stories about people using medicinal marijuana and in the treatment of cancer, and you hear mixed stories, and I think a lot of there's a sort of opposition to it from the medical community.
Yes, sir.
Which
there is,
you came up against as well, right?
Yes, I did. What I realized and what I saw was the money trail, and I tell anybody and everybody, follow the money trail. You have all these charities that are out there that are scamming people, all in the name of cancer, going, oh, we're here to help, we're the Susan G. Komen, cancer, blah, 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 we do this, we do that. And last week I saw another report. I can't think of the charity, but it's sad because this charity, the guy who ran it, was paying himself and bilking and scamming people for millions. We're talking like almost 100 million. And to me, it's really, really sad. And when I would argue with my doctors and say, Doc, this chemo's killing me, can you reduce it because I'm dying, this chemo's killing me? Well, come to find out, one of the doctors that was treating me, he owned or had a stake in one of the pharmacies. So no wonder why he was wanting to shove these pills down my throat. Every single day. He's like, no, just stay on the pills. I mean, the first month's pills dosage cost me $1,000 just for a 30-month supply till my insurance kicked in. So I'm like, holy schmoly. Each chemo, the doctor buys the chemo for around $3,000 to $4,000, sells it to me at a price of $12,000 to $15,000. So multiply 16 rounds of chemo, 8 weeks of radiation, months of chemo pills, numerous surgeries. My insurance company has paid out at least $500,000 so far to Big Pharma, to these doctors. So when you tell me that you have raised hundreds of millions for decades now, you and I both know cancer's been around forever, and all these charities have raised hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars so far, you're going to tell me, explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old, how there's no cure for cancer. You could fly to the moon, and Kevin, you're a filmmaker, they could invent these crazy cameras that could do incredible things that we never even dreamed of 20 years ago. And we've advanced in different areas of medical research. And here I am, just a normal kid that I'm not a millionaire, I'm not Patrick Swayze, I'm not Farrah Fawcett, so I don't have millions of dollars at my beck and call to afford the fanciest and the best doctors in the medical field. I had to take the ball, and take it by the lead and just take the ball and run and do my own research and save my own life. And that's what I've done. I've done so much research on this cannabis oil and medicinal marijuana. It's not even funny. And I was written up in High Times magazine, as you know. I've shared the article. The Daily Mirror in the UK picked it up. And because of this one article, just this week alone, I checked my inbox and my Facebook, account, and there was over 100 messages from all over the world, from Greece, from Turkey, from Iran, from Australia, from Wisconsin, from Washington. I heard about your story. I was saved. My husband was sent home to hospice because the doctors couldn't explain, they can't save him because he's got brain cancer. We read your story, got on the cannabis oil. The doctors can't explain why my husband isn't dying now, why the tumors in his brain stopped growing. Another lady emailed me and said, Mark, because of your story, my 11-month-old niece is now saved. We rub cannabis oil on the bottoms of her feet, and the doctors can't explain why her brain cancer stopped growing while she's, responding so well.
Wow.
Another lady emailed me as well, and I was in tears as I'm reading these emails. She's like, Mark, I was in Houston, and I moved from Houston to Colorado where the oil is legal, and I couldn't stand the chemo. It was killing me. So now that I'm on the oil, I've never felt better. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Wow.
So these are the type of stories I hear every single day. So that's why I feel the need and the cause to talk about it as we're doing now, it's a serious issue.
Yeah, and it's alarming to me that something like this that is essentially harmless otherwise, right? I mean, there aren't
Yeah,
any like
yeah.
negative side effects, right? And this,
No, there's no long-term side effects, and nobody in the history of mankind has ever overdosed on cannabis oil or medicinal
right,
marijuana.
right,
Ever.
yeah. So the mere fact that this thing, is out there and that people are seeing benefit from it, but you can't get it legally in most places in the U.S. and you can't, it's just it's astounding to me.
Yeah.
And
Crazy. Yeah.
like you, now I read the High Times article, and I
Uh-huh.
believe you said this, and correct me if I'm misquoting, but I mean you were raised in the same anti-drug culture I was raised in, where you say no to
Big time.
everything, and
Yes.
marijuana was
Yes, sir.
evil and that sort of thing. And so as a result, I mean, I've never tried marijuana, I've never tried any drugs, and I think you were essentially in the same boat, right? You had never tried anything.
Pretty much. Yeah. Exactly. No,
Yeah.
never. I mean, I'll drink beer with the best of them
Yeah.
and alcohol, but that was the extent because I was raised, in a very strict, Catholic environment. I grew up
Yeah.
going to parochial schools all my life, and you were just taught in the Reagan era, just say no.
Yeah.
So that was this stigma, and it's just now after doing all my research and seeing how corrupt, our system is, and how corrupt even somebody like Nixon, who made it a Schedule I drug, all because all these people were influenced by big pharma and the medical industry. If you follow the paper trail with a lot of the lawmakers that don't want to pass this, this drug to heal people, if you look at who their sponsors are, you look at Big Pharma and you see Big Pharma has strong lobbyists in Congress, here on a local level, in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Big Pharma, they're $1 billion industry. So here I am, this one kid who's got a cure for cancer, doesn't have the money or the resources to put it out there and to fight these big pharma companies. So that's what I'm going up against right there.
Right.
I'm just a little kid, and if you want to do it, do it. I'm doing it illegally, and I'm healing myself illegally. And people say, oh, well, how do you know it works? You did chemo, you did radiation, you're doing it all. Well, how I base this and what I say it is I knew specifically 3 other people that were going through the same cancer that I had, stage 4 colorectal cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and they all listened to their doctors. I even told one, I even consult with people now about this because I'm like the living guinea pig. So I even consulted with this one family and told them, if you listen to your doctors, I promise you, you will die, because they don't know as much as you think they do. They only know by like, okay, you're 45 years old, you got stage 4 cancer, do 8 rounds of chemo, 8 weeks of radiation. There's like a standard formula for everybody. Mm-hmm. So they don't bother to think outside the box. I'd be like, Doc, but I'm doing cannabis oil. And they're like, oh, that's cool. I don't know much about it, but I hear a lot about it, but, go for it. So these 3 people that were going through the same cancer as I was, we were roughly the same age, and they all died within a year. Mm-hmm. So they listened to their doctors. They only did the chemo. And here I am 2.5 years later, on borrowed time, proving them all wrong.
Right.
If it's still shrinking, if I'm still alive, what am I doing? What is the one common denominator that, that I'm doing that others aren't doing? Right. So I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is and just, doing the oil. The reason why I do, the chemo is because my cancer is so aggressive. And like I said, it's the second deadliest cancer out there.
Right.
So I want as much as I can going into battle. If you go into battle, do you want just a 45? No, you want an AR, you want a bazooka, you want RPG, you want hand grenades. You want as much going into battle as possible, and that's how I feel when I deal and fight cancer. Chemo does work. I will give it that. There have been people that have met with great success with chemo, but the side effects are really, really brutal. I know some people that have taken chemo back in the 80s and 90s, and that chemo is now outlawed because the chemo was so strong it was killing people, mm-hmm. and it was making their hearts so weak that they had to take heart medicine every single day now just to function.
Right.
The chemo was so bad that some people can't even shower in the water no more, use water, because it is so, it's just the side effects they're just too many to name. And they'll tell you up front, when you take this chemo, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, and you're like, holy schmoly, why
right.
am I doing this? But we know it works. We know it kills the cancer. But a lot of people, as my father, who was 70, couldn't handle the chemo. So the cancer that I have killed him within 3 months. So right. It's just, it's sad. And I was telling people that if you're not going to do chemo and you want an alternative medicine, I'm telling you, this cannabis oil works wonders. I hear from people all over the world. I have nothing to gain by. I make no money off of touting cannabis oil. I don't own, I don't even sell it,
Right.
so I don't even get it for anybody. And so I just tell the story because I believe it needs to be told.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to take a second, because people listening, and I just want to make sure everyone's clear that we're not advocating that you don't see a doctor, that you don't get treatment,
Exactly.
but that this is an alternative treatment that when all else it looks like it can't work, you're better off trying this than not trying it. So
what have you got to lose is what
exactly.
I tell people.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing because when I get people on this and when they're on their last hope, they literally wait till their loved one, their husband, their wife, their daughter, their son, their mom, their dad is told to go to hospice and prepare for hospice. You're going to die. There's nothing we can no longer do. When these people write and tell me, Mark, we got on the oil as soon as we're told this, and my husband, my daughter, et cetera, is still alive. Thank you so much. Right. I mean, how else can you look at it? I mean, what else?
Right,
you could say it's a miracle from God, whatever God you believe in. I believe in all that stuff, the power of prayer and everything.
Yeah.
It definitely works. But, check it out. Do your research. I tell people to do your research all the time. They go, whenever I do research, your name is the first thing that pops up, for cancer research. So I think it's really cool.
We got to get you a book, man.
Yeah, well, I'm doing a documentary on it. It's
called
there you go. Way to Go FICO. Yeah, I've got a website built up and everything, and it's called Way to Go FICO, or the incredibly strange but true story on Hollywood, cannabis oil, and Rocky Balboa saved my life.
Okay.
So it's going to be one of those it's going to be comedic. People are like, Rocky Balboa, what are you talking about? Well, the day after I was diagnosed, with cancer the first time, I watched all the Rocky movies. I grew up on them as everybody else, watching Stallone. And watching the underdog, when you see this guy in the very first one and you watch it from like a human standpoint, like, wow, this guy overcame, great odds. And what's funny about it is the actual true story behind Rocky. If you've ever seen 30 for 30, watch it. It's the Chuck Wepner story about how Stallone went to this fight one time, and he saw this fight to see Muhammad Ali fight this unknown. This guy was like a Rocky Balboa. He was fighting on the small club circuit, getting beat up, going through these little rinky-dink halls, doing fighting. He was doing pretty well. And somebody had dropped out of a fight to fight Muhammad Ali. They got Chuck Wepner at the last minute to fight him. It was a big deal. Everybody's like, oh, man, Muhammad Ali's going to beat this guy in the first round. This guy's a nobody, blah, blah, blah. And Chuck Wepner went the distance with him. And he even knocked Muhammad Ali out in the last round and knocked him down. So Chuck Wepner he got knocked down in the last 15 seconds of the fight, and Muhammad Ali won. And it was just the greatest story. Everybody's like, holy schmoly, this guy went the distance with this champ, and now he was a hero. He was a celebrated hero. It was a really cool story. It's really neat how him and Sylvester Stallone got to be friends. He ended up suing Sylvester Stallone. It's in Universal, because he never got any credit for it.
Right.
He never got $1 from it. So it was really amazing because Stallone even said, this is a true story. I based my Rocky character off this Chuck guy, and it was really neat. So just to see how somebody, just the determination and the human will to live and to survive is really incredible when you're faced with great odds.
Right.
So that's where I was at, basically, and that's how I related to Rocky Balboa. And to work with Stallone years later on Bullet to the Head was pretty cool, too, in itself. Like, holy schmoly, I'm working with this guy I grew up watching, so it was pretty neat.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts about your work, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, we're out of time, so which is unfortunate because I have a feeling you and I could go on and on about all this.
Oh yeah, we'll go on and on about it. Yes.
Yeah, where's the best place for people to find more about you and about this documentary you're working on?
Basically, just Google my name, and you'll see lots of things that come up. You'll find my Facebook page, my IMDb page, my documentary page. So if anybody wants to, we're in the information age. If you want to find out anybody's phone number, you just go to YouTube, you Google me, you'll see my name come up. At the end of my demo reel, there's my information, there's my phone number, there's my email address. So it's not too hard to find me. I'm not making it a secret what I do and how to find me. So if you want to find me, if hundreds of people could find me through my article, we're in the information age.
Okay.
So just Google my name, Mark Chavarria, Chavarria, and that's Mark with a K. You'll find out a lot that's out there on me.
Good deal, man. All right. Hey, thanks for joining me today. And I know
Cool.
I'm going to let you get
Thank
back to your
you.
life, but I'm really glad that you're doing so much better, man. And you have no idea. I've been
Thank
following
you.
you all along, and
Yes, I know. Thank you very much for all the support and the prayers. I really appreciate it.
of course. Yeah. All right. Everyone else listening, stay tuned. We'll do the wrap up at the end. And of course, you can always check the show notes to find links to anything we've discussed here. I will be finding a link directly to The Wolfpack on Netflix because now I want to watch it. But thanks again, Mark, for being with us. And we'll see everyone else after this brief musical interlude. Well, that was my interview with my good friend Mark. I think, that's the situation he went through with his cancer was, it's scary. That sort of thing happens to a lot of us. Either we ourselves have experienced that, or we have family that went through that. We had to bear through that with them. My grandmother, who was very dear to me, raised me like her own son for a large portion of my life when my mom was traveling with her husband and living out of state. So, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she died of leukemia. And watching her go through that, it didn't last long with her. It was so sudden, and she was just gone. And to this day, I wish I had known some things that I've learned. Who knows what would have happened? I can't say for sure that if she were to try cannabis oil or something like that it would help her. I can't advocate that. And their opinions vary, research varies. There's plenty of research to say that it doesn't work, or evidence at least. I don't know how much research there actually is, but there's some stuff out there. So there are things that are in doubt, and I don't want to give false hope to anyone, and neither does Mark. But I think what's being offered here is a question, because there's a lot we don't know about cancer, about cannabis oil, about how our bodies react to both. And Mark is actually out there advocating more research. He's actually out there spearheading a lot of the effort to look into this more and provide more evidence and to look for a cure for this horrible disease that affects so many of us. I've lost, in the past 2 months, I've lost at least one relative to this, and some friends to cancer. And so it's a very serious thing. So something to look into if you feel like you're at the end of the road, if you feel like you're at the end of hope. This is something to look into. Let's just say that. So didn't mean to get all maudlin and serious there. I know that's not the Word Slinger brand per se, so we'll get back to it. If you have any questions, I hope you'll feel free to ask. If you have any comments, questions, anything, go to wordslingerpodcast.com. You can email me from there. I would really love to get voicemails. I don't get many. I've had a couple, and we've played them on the show when I get them. I am here to answer any question you have. Now, in particular, I'm an expert on the self-publishing industry. The idea of developing a daily writing habit is something I'm expert in. Happy to help in those things. I always encourage entrepreneurs to have a book. If you have questions about the process of that, feel free to ask me. If you have a question that would be oriented toward one of our guests, I'm happy to just pass that along and read off any answers I get, or maybe even bring the guest back on the show to answer questions. I've wanted to do a segment like that for quite a while. So. And if you have comments, if there's something about this episode or any other episode that you want to comment on, I would ask that you be polite if it's a negative comment. But I'm not gonna I'm not gonna hold you back. This is all about learning. I was invited to do an interview on the podcast 8 Questions, where actually I'll be. I don't think I'm violating anything here. I haven't signed any paperwork or anything, but I've actually been asked to co-host that show. Not co-host, but occasionally guest host that show, along with several other people. So you're going to hear the Wordslinger kind of woven into that show, the 8 Questions podcast, which is owned by Sterling and Stone. And I was asked to be interviewed on that show recently, and one of the questions that Sean Platt asked me was what was the sort of why the Word Slinger podcast? Let's just shorthand it to that. How does it fit in with my business model as an author? And my honest answer was that it actually doesn't. It doesn't fit my author business model much at all, other than if I wanted to do nonfiction work like 30-Day Author, it would definitely be a good lead-in for that. But my answer essentially was I do this because I learn from the people I talk to, and it's a growth experience for me. Which means I hope that it's equally a growth experience for you. I think that sometimes we get locked into our sort of our chosen field. We don't pay attention to anything outside of it. And I talk to entrepreneurs from all sorts of industries and fields. And I talk to people who may not even necessarily consider themselves entrepreneurs, just to get an insight into how they think, how they do things, so that we can all learn and grow from it. And that's kind of what I did today, and that's what most episodes are. So it's a growth experience. It's a learning experience. So anyway, we're past an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. But thank you so much for tuning in. There's the music right there, and I hope you're enjoying yourselves. If you are listening to this on the day it launches, have a safe and happy weekend. Visit us at wordslingerpodcast.com. Call us at 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673, and I'll see you next week.
Word Slinger.